Hello, everybody. This is Sharonda, and this is me again on my podcast as well as my YouTube speaker, studio podcast, and also YouTube channel, which is entitled Spiritual Sense. So as I mentioned, I was going to speak on unidentified flying objects. Okay. So oftentimes when we hear the term UFOs or unidentified flying object, we laugh, brush it off, don't think much of it, okay? And we correlate that to foolish science or pseudoscience or some type of, prank. I can't say one way or another where it is, but I do feel as though it is a message within the prank or whatever the case may be, okay? So, I do recall seeing some things, a couple of times in my life that I could not identify. I did not personally know what it was. And I do recall a conversation that I had with a colleague in regards to these things being in the quote-unquote Bible. And so in my quest to understand what exactly that was, I asked God because, as I mentioned before, I do feel like God has a way of enlightening us of things by way of, even though it's been maybe done by way of a prank or somebody being, mischievous or trying to be sarcastic, it's still being done under the guidance of a spirit. And I feel as though this is God's way of enlightening us by way of our thought process. It's a language that is understood but not spoken, so to speak. So I'm going to go with Wikipedia's depiction of what a UFO is. Well, as I mentioned, it's an unidentified flying object. Any perceived or aerial phenomenon that cannot be immediately identified or explained. On investigation, most UFOs are identified as known objects or atmospheric phenomena, while a small number remain unexplained. Scientists and skeptic organizations have provided, explanation, as it mentions here, of a large number of claimed UFOs being caused by natural phenomena, human technology, delusions, and hoaxes. Small but vocal groups of UFOologists favor unconventional, pseudo-scientific hypotheses, some of which go beyond the typical extraterrestrial visitation claims and sometimes form part of new religions. While unusual sightings have been reported in the sky throughout history, UFOs did not achieve their current cultural prominence until the period of World War II, escalating during the space age. It mentions the 20th century saw studies and investigation into UFOs reports conducted by governments as well as by organizations and individuals. So it mentions early history before the 20th century. People have observed the sky throughout history and sometimes seen unusual sights such as comets, bright meteors, one or more of the 5 planets that can be readily seen with the naked eye, planetary conjunctions, and atmospheric optical phenomena such as Hesperella and lenticular clouds. One particularly famous example is the Halley's Comet. This was recorded first by Chinese astronomers in 2040 BC and possibly as early as 467 BC. As it reaches the inner solar system every 76 years, it was often identified as a unique isolated event in ancient historical documents whose authors were unaware that it was a repeating phenomenon. Such accounts in history often were treated as supernatural portents, angels, and other religious omens. While UFO enthusiasts have sometimes commented on the narrative similarities between certain religious symbols in medieval paintings and UFO reports, the canonical and symbolic character of such images is documented by art historians, placing more conventional religious interpretations on such images. So before I go into any more information, well, let me go ahead and proceed because it's not that extensive. It does give accounts of examples. It says Julius Obsequinus was a Roman writer who believed to have lived in the middle of the 4th century AD. The only work associated with his name is the Libra de Prodinglis, completely extracted from an epitome or abridgment written by Livy, and it was constructed as an account of wonders and portents that occurred in Rome between 249 and 12 BCE, an aspect of Obsequin's work that has inspired excitement in some UFO enthusiasts is that he makes reference to things moving through the sky. It is possible that it is a description of meteors, and since Obsequinus is writing some 400 years after the events he describes, the text is not an eyewitness account. So it does go on. It says a wood cut by Haynes Glasser that appeared in broadsheet in 1561 has been featured in popular culture as celestial phenomena over Nuremberg and connected to various ancient astronaut claims. According to the writer Jason Covalbito, the image represents a second-hand depiction of a particularly gaudy sundog, a known atmospheric optical phenomenon. A similar report comes from 1566 over Basel, and indeed the 15th and 16th centuries, many leaflets wrote of miracles and sky spectaculars. On January the 25th, 1878, the Denison Daily News printed an article which John Martin, a local farmer, had reported seeing a large dark circular object resembling a balloon flying at wonderful speed. Martin, according to a newspaper account, said it appeared to be about the size of a saucer. From his perspective, one of the first uses of the word saucer in association with UFO. In April of that year, reports of such mystery airships in various parts of the United States are reminiscent of modern UFO waves. Many signed affidavits. Scores of people even reported talking to the pilots. Reports of strange ships and artificial lights in the sky were published in local newspapers for the next 2 decades, culminating in a mass panic in 1897, where some people feared that Thomas Edison had created an artificial star that could fly around the country. When asked his opinion of such reports, Edison said, "You can take it from me that it is a pure fake." So it mentions about 20th century and after, and the specific in European theaters during the World War II round, glowing fireballs known as Foo Fighters were reported by Allied and Axis pilots. Some proposed Allied explanation at the time included St. Elmo's fire, the planet Venus, hallucinations from oxygen deprivation, or German secret weapons. In 1946, more than 2,000 reports were collected, primarily by the Swedish military, of unidentified aerial objects over the Scandinavian nations, along with isolated reports from France, Portugal, Italy, and Greece. The objects were referred to as Russian hail because it was thought the mysterious objects were possibly Russian tests of captured German V-1 or V-2 rockets. Most were identified as natural phenomena as meteors. The popular UFO craze, by many accounts, began with a media frenzy surrounded the reports on June 24th of 1947 that a civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing the 9 objects flying in formation near Mount Rainier in the United States. At the time, he claimed that he described the objects flying in a saucer-like fashion, leading to newspaper accounts of flying saucers and flying discs. Soon, reports of flying saucer sightings became a daily occurrence, with one particularly famous example being the Roswell Incident, where remnants of a downed observation balloon were recovered by a farmer and confiscated by military personnel. The story received scant attention at the time, but interest in it revived in 1990. In the 1990s, with the public publicity surrounding the television broadcast of an alien autopsy video marketed as real footage, but later admitted to be a stage reenactment. Various UFO claimants said that they had interacted with the aliens driving the spacecraft, and a few said they had visited the crafts themselves. In 1971, the first alien abduction account was sensationalized when Barney and Betty Hill went under hypnosis after seeing a UFO and reported recovered memories of their experiences that became ever more elaborate as the years went by. So, as media accounts and speculation were running rampant in the U.S., by 1953, intelligence officials are worried that genuine excursions by enemy aircraft over U.S. territory could be lost in a maelstrom of kooky hallucination of UFO reports. Media were enlisted to help debunk and discourage UFO reports, culminating in a 1966 TV special UFO Friend, Foe, or Fantasy, in which Walter Cronkite patiently explained to viewers that UFOs were fantasy. Cronkite enlisted Carl Sagan and J. Allen Hynek, who told Cronkite, "To this time, there is no valid scientific proof that we have been visited by spaceships." Fellow NICAP official Donald E. Kehoe wrote that Vice Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, the first director of the CIA, wanted public disclosure of UFO evidence. A 1969 National Academy of Sciences panel reviewed the Condon report and concurred with its finding, observing that while further study of particular aspects of the topic may be useful, a study of UFOs in general is not a promising way to expand scientific understanding of the phenomenon. Referencing the panel's conclusion, the Pentagon announced that it would no longer investigate UFO reports. According to the Keith Clore, the allure of flying saucers remained popular with the public into the 1970s, spurring production of such sci-fi film as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Alien, which continued to stoke public fascination. Clore writes that by the late 1990s, other big UFO sub-themes have been prominently introduced into pop culture, such as the abduction phenomenon and government conspiracy narratives via best-selling books and in the X-Files. Okay, so it does go into, different accounts of, UFOs and famous hoaxes and things of that nature. So as I have gotten older and, of course on Wikipedia, a lot of things are very, very extensive. So it has here a prosaic explanation. So it's explanations, okay? It says studies have shown that after careful investigation, the majority of UFOs have been identified as ordinary objects or phenomena. The most common identified sources of UFO reports are, it says, astronomical objects such as bright stars, bolids, bright planets, and the moon. Aircraft, including military, civilian, experimental aircraft, as well as such peculiarities as aerial advertisement, missile, and other rocket launches, artificial satellites, re-entering spacecraft, including space debris, kites, and various unmanned aerial vehicles, often popularly doomed drones, balloons, toy balloons, weather balloons, large research balloons, other atmospheric objects and phenomena such as birds, unusual clouds, or flares. Light phenomena, mirages, fata morgana, ball lightning, moon dogs, satellite flares, searchlights, and other ground lights. Psychological effects. It has pareidolia, suggestibility, and false memories, mass psychogenic disorders, optical illusions, and hallucinations, as well as hoaxes. So, it just goes over different synopses of investigations of, different countries in regards to, what the explanations are. So I am going to give you what my inclination and my account is, because as I mentioned, I have been one of those who have seen things since I was a young girl, and and ask God for clarity and understanding and insight as to what a lot of those things are. Okay, we refer to these things, and this is what my guide is telling me to explain to you, to those who are out there. We refer to these things as UFOs, unidentified flying objects, because we don't have knowledge of those things. So, they want to take account as to what that is so they can get some explanation as to what that is. Okay. On a bigger scale, I feel as though this is a message within a message. As I mentioned, most of the UFO accounts refer to a flying saucer. What is a saucer? Many people may not know what a saucer is. A saucer is a smaller plate. You notice that oftentimes they are in rural areas or farm-like areas where there's a harvest of food or product or crop. Could this very well be some type of a knowing in terms of what you should do with your crop or should not do with your crop, in terms of production and productivity and crops and sharecropping or trade and commodities as such? Should I fast? So should I take more in, or should I, water the crop, or do I need more weather, rain to help moisten the crop, or is it too much rain and I need to dry out the crop, or whatever the case may be? How to till the ground, how to upkeep a farmland. That's what I gather from that. It also can be in the instance of rations. Do we ration certain foods to certain locations at certain times? Do this group of people need this versus this group of people need that? Do we need to take away over here, or do we need to add over here? Where do we disperse these products? That's what I gather from that. Is being done by way of the government? I do feel as though it's being done by way of the government, meaning by way of God. Because ultimately, I do believe everything is God and God is everything. Whether it be favorably or unfavorably is what I mean. Okay? Now, in terms of the different lights and the phenomena that you may see, even with weather and things of that nature, mass communication, mass hallucination, as they refer to it. Well, basically what that is, a group of people would see it. They all would see it. And it would be in an agreement. Like, all of the spirits would know what that is that are in agreement. They would see the same thing. That means they will all see it together as to what that is. Oftentimes, when somebody is sealed from understanding that, it's because it's something particular about that situation. It's what that basically is. So, as I mentioned, we are being tested and we are being monitored. Now, I did a podcast or episode on my Spiritual Sense podcast where I mentioned about innovation. I mentioned about innovation, and that's what I mean when I say the past and the present, or the past and the future sits right here in the present. So as far as the information that we know in this time and space that we are aware of, the record keeping, I feel like is in another lands. Do I feel like civilization began in the 1700s, as is being written in this time and space for our knowledge, that this country was established then? I don't believe that. I believe that this country was here prior to the establishment of the country. I also believe that they came back and forth. These things were occurring before then. And I believe that, a lot of the technologies that we see now were back then. I do believe that. How far back then, I can't pinpoint because I don't know. But from my understanding and what I have gathered, I believe these people were very, very prevalent and prominent and geniuses even then. I believe these lands was inhabited prior to the discovery, is what I believe. And I believe they had a trade agreement. I believe things were being built prior to. That's what I feel. These things were occurring way before civilization was established in this time and space. Because what you will begin to see is you got some people that are behind the times. You got some people that are above the times, sit right here in the present. You will see that in everyday walks of life. You got some people that are old school. You got some people that are far advanced, futuristic, sit right here in the present. So, to get on one accord, I believe this is why people spy and the formulation of cameras to see, okay, are they doing the same thing over there as we're doing over here? And vice versa. This is God. This is it. This is it. So I do feel like he does have the ability to manipulate things on a bigger, higher scale. So from what our understanding in this time and space, we will say, okay, well, we got satellites and all of this stuff up there, whatever. This universe and this galaxy is astronomical. I don't even think it's infinite. You can't even measure it. Like just put it this way. If you go on the beach, it's just like and I'm just, going to exaggerate it. It's just like I feel as though it is a grain of sand, to be honest with you. I do. It's a grain of sand. Or even, a cup of sand is what we know in terms of this time and this space. Do I believe they just began with the technologies that we see here in this time and this space? I do not. I do believe as though this is God's way of allowing spirits to come in to enlighten you as to what occurred back then and what is to come in this present time of the matter. And if you pay attention, it's a language that is spoken, understood, but not spoken. It's what I feel. They said, electricity was discovered. Well, who channeled that energy for Benjamin Franklin to channel electricity? This is what you understand in this time and space, that Benjamin Franklin discovered, quote unquote, electricity. By way of what spirit? This is something, the same God that is here today was the same God and gods that was here time ago. So I do not believe that this country came into existence in 1700s, as they mentioned. That's in our time and space. This is in within the last 400 years. We don't know. We can only go off of what is written. But do we believe everything that is written? No, we cannot. You will ask God for insight, clarity as such, because oftentimes those spirits do not want to be revealed if it's unfavorable. It's the point. To protect the dignity and the integrity of that time and space. So, I'm not trying to make this a historical, because this is more or less my, the information that I'm going into now is more or less my, ancient ancestry podcast. But I did watch a program some time ago that, even back in the ancient Egyptian, they had electricity back then. So, where did all of that go? Who knows? So, a lot of things in life is hypothetical. We really and truly, honestly, can't really say. But, of course, we want to give something definitive. I understand and I get that. Okay? So, I am going to close out this podcast today of Spiritual Sense in regards to UFOs or unidentified flying objects. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.